what should people stop doing?
Stop making assumptions. Listen well in order to learn and to understand, and stop making assumptions based off what you think is already happening.
Welcome back to Service First. I'm Ben Wiggins, and I'm here today with Matthew Rother. Matthew, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Ben, thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure. Let's start with the icebreaker. What is the worst service failure you've ever seen?
Man, the worst service failure I've ever seen. I think the first thing that pops into my mind was actually at a restaurant. And I wasn't there for this physically, but both my sisters, my mother, and my wife were there, as was my 1-year-old nephew at the time. And they had a waiter that was kind of acting a little bit off, and the whole time, and didn't think too much of it, but just kind of a little weird. And towards the end of their meal, he left and he came back with a knife and proceeded to threaten them all, crawl on top of the table, and they all had to he had to be restrained by another patron. And the worst part of it was, not only was that their waiter, but the restaurant didn't barely acknowledged it afterwards. This guy was clearly, I'll say, intoxicated with something, and had some issues going on. And so that, when you ask that question, that's definitely the first one that comes to mind. It's pretty outlandish, but true story nonetheless.
That is stark. And there was never any explanation for what was he upset about something? Why did he threatened your family with a knife?
Yeah, I really don't know. I think, honestly, it's probably a good thing that I wasn't there. I wish I was, but it's probably a good thing I wasn't, because everybody ended up okay and they left just fine and, moved on. But at the same time, I don't know that I would have been so kind had I been there. But yeah, there's never an explanation. You would think at least I don't know, comp your meal, give you a voucher, something that, no real explanation, just kind of moved on.
Okay. Yes. Well, I'm going to agree with you. That's a pretty bad service failure. What pushed you toward a position of ownership, a position of entrepreneurship, drove you away from a more traditional job, so to speak?
That's a great question. Man, for me, I think a lot of it was just opportunity and a lot of my personality. So I came out of the military, and so coming out of that environment where, ultimately, I was working, my joke kind of coming into this job was I was working for the largest, most robust organization in the world, probably, in the Department of Defense, and transitioned out of that into working for, almost a sole proprietorship in a sense, where very few employees, very, very loose structure. And honestly, I think just having that opportunity to come out of that environment and some of the lessons that I got to learn in that environment really teed me up to step into entrepreneurship. And I won't say that the transition was easy. And frankly, there's continues to be struggles that go along with that, where where all of a sudden, I'm my own boss, where I was used to getting a paycheck from the government every 2 weeks, and those checks tended to not bounce, so that was great. Never had to worry about that, and now it's completely different. And then now I'm responsible for funding employees and funding overhead costs and things like that. And so, but ultimately, what drove me towards that and the opportunity that presented itself was just an opportunity to kind of have the flexibility and the ownership and the equity that is inside of your own business. And so I love that, just that ownership aspect, being able to really affect change in a meaningful way, is something that I greatly value. I think I got some of that in the military and certain jobs, but have that to an even higher degree now, where I get to really drive change or drive the action inside the company.
Yeah. What have there been any moments that have been particularly challenging? What was the hardest thing for you to read or to hear as a business owner?
Usually, for me, the hardest things to hear tend to be those kind of, I guess, customer complaints, in a sense. and just hearing when I felt like I've teed things up well. There's one example, I guess, from the end of last year even, where we had a customer that we just implemented a relatively new process, and it's kind of, trial and error, learning over time and just getting things better. And I thought we had really improved this particular service aspect of what we were doing. I was really excited about it. Went towards the client in a renewal over a pretty complex transaction, and the client ended up very frustrated because of frankly a lot of it was on them and them not recognizing or being prepared for what was coming. But we have to own that, right? Because it's my job to take care of them, and so I think that was frustrating, where I felt like I had been making really positive gains, and then they came back with negative feedback and stuff that was really out of my control in a lot of sense. And then what continued to play out in that instance was them starting to almost distrust me for something that I felt like wasn't my fault. And so that's really tough feedback when you feel like you're losing the trust of somebody, and you're not even sure how that got to that place.
Are there any unexpected ways that you're able to create wins in a situation like that? Like, did you try something that you wouldn't normally try in order to regain the trust, in order to redevelop the relationship? Like, what was your ace?
Yeah, I think candidly, still kind of working through it a little bit. But I think showing humility in those instances is just one of the greatest things that we can do as business owners. I own this business with my father, and so work with him, and he's been involved in this a little bit as well. And so even just watching his reaction, he's got a lot more, many more years in doing this and experience. And so just even watching his humility in this situation was huge, because for me, I'm sitting there getting super frustrated, not wanting to deal with the client anymore. I think if I were on the phone, I'd handle it a similar way. I'd like to think that, at least, but being able to watch him in real time, just act with a lot of humility and a lot of patience towards the client, towards the situation in general. I think that was probably the biggest lesson I've learned out of that, for sure.
Interesting. There's some moments that we get to share with the team, but sometimes I think as business owners, like the moments of greatest triumph, or sometimes of greatest realization in a positive sense, are often we end up kind of having to keep them to ourselves, or those moments just happen while we're alone. Like, was there a moment where you hung up the phone and jumped up in the air, or laughed out loud, or you felt like you expressed yourself in a way that you never would do publicly because of a big win or a breakthrough or something like that?
Sure. I think for me, a lot of those moments come when trying to solve complex problems and articulate complex scenarios in a clear and concise way, so that the client or maybe the other advisors that we're working with at times can understand. And so one instance in Q4 of last year, we're working with a new client, still trying to win business from this client, and I was able to take a pretty complex situation and pull it down into a chart that before the meeting even, we were looking at this and saying, we kind of even had differing opinions. My father and I had differing opinions on what this looked like and what this should look like. And at the end, it was more or less a neutral decision. We said, hey, let's go with it. Went to the client, presented the information, and in the middle of the meeting, there was essentially overt praise or confirmation that we had done the right thing and done it in a way that was meaningful to him. And so that was definitely an instance where obviously I couldn't dare be like, yeah, that's right, I did it towards the client, but was able to celebrate and revel in that moment for a little bit on the drive home, at least, if nothing else. And then it's right on to the next thing. So.
Yeah, taking the time to, it's always hard to know kind of how much time to take to celebrate victory. Coaches always say we're gonna enjoy it for the next 24 hours, and then we got to start game planning for the next one. So then a service action that you were particularly proud of from a team member, or a coworker, like this not just makes me happy as a business owner, but this makes me feel good as a person, like something that was particularly hard for them to do, but they did it in a way that was very impressive or compelling.
Yeah. When I think about that, I think my favorite moments are the ones where I think employees solve problems on their own without being asked. So they go kind of out of their way to solve problems that are either maybe hard problems to solve, or are just solving things without being asked. So instead of me coming, and saying, "Hey, I need help with this thing, do X, Y, or Z, or make sure we do this," they come back and say, "Hey, boss, I figured out a new way to do this service thing that we did, or that we've been working on, and I think it's going to be great." And nobody actually called me boss, by the way, so I'm not really sure why I use that vernacular, but but
an interview with Matthew Boss Rother.
Exactly. Let's make sure you throw that in the notes for me. In the description. But having them solve complex problems or notice issues and take action before being asked. And so, and even thinking of like taking care of a client and trying to get stuff submitted to a carrier in the lab at the end of the year, and there was a piece of information that wasn't correct I think it was on an application, if I remember right, and on of their own accord, my employee was able to go through and realize, oh no, this is not right, or this will reflect poorly on the application, and brought that to my attention and made the changes before I even had to say anything or look through it. And that's a huge win. And I love in those instances getting to hit the reply all, and just be like, "Man, great job. That was awesome. You nailed it." That's always very satisfying for me to get to kind of show that praise to the rest of the team.
Have you found one of the things that I struggle with as a business owner is figuring out ways to not motivate but reward employees who are motivated by something very different than what I'm motivated by? How do you think about that, and like kind of getting to the bottom of what really makes your employees tick isn't the right word, but like tick in a good way, I guess.
For me, one of the things that's been most helpful is just trying to sit down and listen on I'll say like semi-routine basis. We just had a meeting at the end of the year where we kind of just a team meeting where we got to sit down and talk with the team, and it was very helpful for me to know that that it's important for them to really feel like they're a part of the process from beginning to end. And they're all specialists in some part of the process, and they do a great job at what they do. But they want to know, like when they're helping me build a client presentation that's trying to win business, they want to know when we win it and what that means, and they want to know the end result. And so sharing the process with our employees so that they feel like they have more ownership, I think has been really helpful for us and kind of help building that motivation and helping them check off those wins for the organization, because they love I love being a part of an organization where I can wrap my head around, hey, here's the whole thing and what we do and where we're moving, how we're growing, and they do as well. Even though they might be a specialist in one specific area, they want to know at least generally how the whole thing's working.
Yeah. All right, now I'm going to turn it around. So being active on LinkedIn, being active kind of in the local business community, You interact with a lot of people, both virtually and in person, over the course of an average week or an average month. What are trends that you don't like? Who's doing something that you don't like to see? Like, do you have? Is there anyone you have a bone to pick with? Doesn't have to be anybody we know personally, but I see, for my part, I see a lot of LinkedIn influencers, and some of them are doing, I think, really helpful stuff, and some of them I think are borderline fraudsters. Are there trends developing that you don't like?
Yeah, I think on LinkedIn specifically, the things that I tend to see most often that just make me either not want to interact with that person or move right on is when they're trying to play too much off of emotion in a business type setting or business environment where in my mind business is it's pretty binary, most of it, and hopefully we're passionate about it, we love it, right? We want those things to be true. However, at the end of the day, business comes down to dollars and cents. How are we making money? How are we serving our clients? Like, how are we what kind of service are we providing? And when you start playing too much off of emotion, then that can be frustrating. And even on a personal level, like I can think of talk about bones to pick. Like there was a relationship that I've been developing for a while within the last year, and I felt like things were we seemed to be clicking, like similar values, working well together, and I'd done quite a bit of work for this with and alongside this firm, I guess, and then at the end of the day, they came back and basically just undercut me for because they could make a little bit more money, and that to me is fine. Like I love, again, it's pretty pragmatic. So if you don't feel like I'm providing value or the value that we've agreed upon already, that's great. Let's talk about it. But in this instance, it was again kind of behind the back in a way where it just felt a little slimy. So purporting to be one thing on one side, I felt like really good, face to face. Oh yeah, let's have we're gonna have a great meeting and interact well. And then that wasn't what they seemed to be about. So I think the same can be true on LinkedIn in some ways.
Yeah. I think, ironically, the people I have a bone to pick with are kind of the people who have a bone to pick with everyone else. I feel like it's kind of, and I don't want to get too much into the politics of this, but I feel like it's kind of the same thing with politics. It's almost not a question of what you're for so much as it's a question of what are you against. And to me, that conversation always leads to a place of destruction. So final questions. So 10 words or less. What should people start doing in service and in business? What do people need to be starting doing?
I think we start by listening well in service and business. Slow down and listen well.
Okay. And what should people stop doing?
To go along with the same theme is stop making assumptions. So listen well in order to learn and to understand, and to stop making assumptions based off what you think is already happening.
Are there any assumptions that you found yourself making more often than you would like to be? Were there any particular areas where you ran into, I can't do that, got to not make those assumptions?
Yeah, I think that's usually around what people want. I'll try to make assumptions off of around what people want, and instead of just asking, what is it?
What do you want? What are you here for?
Why are we here? Yeah. But really, that is one of those main things that we're trying to get at as a service organization is, what is it all for? And I know mine. I know my why. What's it all for? But then maybe assuming that about other people, that they would have similar values, is the same the same why. It's something I've had to get myself out of, to back up out of. So.
Yeah. Well, Matthew, how can our viewers follow you, keep up with what you're doing? Where would you like them to find you?
Sure. Man, I'm on LinkedIn. Maybe not a ton, but I'm relatively active there. Just Matthew Rother is my name on LinkedIn, so pretty easy to find. And then yeah, if you want to go to oakmontgroup.com is our business website, and you can find out more about what we do to serve our clients.
Matthew, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We look forward to having you back on the show again, and thanks for sharing your insights about service and about business and community.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Ben. Thanks for listening to my wild stories.
Always a pleasure.